Hello and welcome back to 1001 Nights of Reading the World. I'm Mike, and after I got that last video, whatever that was, out of my system, we are back to our scheduled programming of reading around the world. Scheduled programming, that's a good one. And we're going to be real relaxed because it is a cold mid-October day here in the Midwest, as is generally per usual. So you get bathrobe and pajama and hot chocolate-filled pumpkin mug Mike today. Talking about 6 collections of short stories from 6 different countries, which is what I have actually been reading the past week and a half, we'll say. I also wanted to introduce, if you're interested, the big read of the month. So every month until this project ends, I'm kind of trying to do one big read, or at least for the next few months. And last month's was Yo El Supremo for Paraguay, which was fantastic. This month it is the incredibly important Shahnameh, the Persian Book of Kings, a massive epic, which I am both reading and listening to an excellent audiobook version, or audio, I should just say audio version, because it is, I believe, abridged. I'm not quite sure, but it is excellent, and I cannot even overstate the importance of this epic to the region to which it pertains. And I have also started Nikolai Gogol's Dead Souls. I don't know if I will be doing a full video on this, but I am enjoying it so far, and thought I would mention that it's a nice October read as well. And we have a few good October reads as well in these in this collection, these 6 collections of short stories. One of them in particular, 2 of them actually in particular. I will say that I read 3 of these to completion. 2 of them I kind of just read selected stories, and then 1 of them I barely touched. But yeah, they're all collections of different works, and 2 of them are collected works by a number of authors, and 4 of them are all kind of by a bunch of stories from the same author. So I guess we'll just go one by one, won't we? Let's start with the foreign language one. We've got, for me, right, Spanish, reading it in Spanish, Cuentos de Amor, de Locura y de Muerte by Horacio Quiroga. So this is a Uruguayo author from the early 20th century, often is kind of considered the, I guess, Edgar Allan Poe of South America. This, in English, this would translate to, and there is an English version, by the way, tales of love and madness and death. And so you can get the idea of kind of what these tales are about. One of the most famous is the decapitated chicken, which is quite a bizarre story. Almost kind of reminded me a bit of Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a way. And then there is another one that, let's see, what would the name be? Is about a gravedigger who is kind of a drug addict and starts hallucinating. I'm looking for it so I can get the name. The Artificial Hell, El Infierno Artificial. And that one was very interesting. So I read maybe 7 or 8 stories out of the, I want to say 15 in here or so, about half of them. And I would say maybe 3 or 4 out of the 7 I really liked. So it's a hit and miss collection for me with Horacio Quiroga. This is my first kind of attempt at reading him, but I do think he's a worthwhile pick for Uruguay as well as Oneti. is another really good one. I do have some of Onetti's books here that I may or may not get to by the end of the project. We'll see. But for now, this stands in for Uruguay. This next one here, Jazz and Palm Wine, is for the country Congo, not the Democratic Republic of Congo, but Congo. And these short stories are very heavy on the political and social themes. Again, I don't know any of the country context going into these books. I kind of just experience what's there. But what's here shows us a country very much dominated by a Marxist, Lenin, socialist, communist type of government, and the sort of bureaucracies of that government, while also sort of exploring scenes of nightlife and using the rhythms of jazz. There was almost something here in common with the book that I read for Democratic Republic of Congo, which was Tram 51, which also kind of in its style, even though this is a translation, I believe from French, I believe it would be. And but it's still some of what carries over. The rhythm carries over, not quite to the extent that it does in Tram 51. And but it starts to take a really bizarre turn. The stories kind of get more bizarre as they go on until eventually we get a full-on alien invasion. Aliens that can only be satiated by the titular things, jazz and palm wine. So it's an interesting one. I mean, I wouldn't say I loved it, but it was interesting. That's all I can really say. Not much more than that. Yeah, real general stuff. This is the closest I've ever done to just like a straight up book haul video. But there is a country new for the new nation of South Sudan. So this short story collection I couldn't really even get into. I didn't find the stories interesting at all. I read a couple of them, and yeah, it was just really, I just found it really bland, and wasn't for me. So what's interesting though about this one is that South Sudan is the world's newest created nation, I believe. As of the time I was starting this project, that was the case, but I haven't really been following the geopolitical stuff as much as I probably should. But as far as I know, this is the newest, the most recently created country in the world is South Sudan, splitting off from Sudan, and this is just a collection of short stories from different authors that, again, I didn't really find anything that interesting in. This one was good. The Land Without Shadows, which is for Djibouti, tiny little country next to Somalia, near the Horn of Africa, and it's quite, it's kind of like Jazz and Palm Wine, where it mixes in some kind of fantastic elements, and the stories get a bit more bizarre as it goes on. It's just so with Jazz and Palm Wine, you almost get a sense that these are all scenes that are interconnected and part of the same story. This one was a little bit less interconnected. The stories felt more like vignettes, all kind of taking on a different theme. One memorable one is about people who come to the land of the troglodytes, which cave dwellers, and these troglodytes are kind of described as this group of incestuous and kind of backward living peoples, but they seem to be living alongside modern people as well, and it's not really explained. It's just sort of a vignette that's very symbolic, just kind of leaves you a bit like, okay, what did I just read? I don't know why that one was so memorable to me, but there are other good ones in here. But again, it's like almost none of these that I've mentioned so far, I don't know if I would really recommend any of them as like a first choice to anybody to read if you're not doing a read around the world project or not really particularly interested in, you know, it's I mean, it's up to you. At this point, I'm kind of just going through the books that I have collected and going as far with them as I want to and reporting to you on what I thought about them. So I apologize that these aren't as in-depth as my past videos, but I think this was inevitable to happen at some point, that I would sort of reach a point where, you know, I'm getting pickier about what I'm reading, because I started this project in a place where I wasn't reading very much, but now, having read really a lot of books over the past 2 years, I'm just pickier, and I find myself actually really wanting right now to return to some of my favorites, and thinking about that. So this is one I barely touched at all, even though it's kind of the one that is counting for me for the entirety of Micronesia, which includes a few nation states. And this is a good time to say that I got a little bit carried away in my last video by saying that I've collected a book from every single country, because that's actually false. So now you have something to blackmail me with for the rest of my YouTube life. But you know, I did start this project out with a book called The True Deceiver, so you know, you better watch me. You know, so this Micronesia is a collection of islands out in the Pacific, and it's also a collection of poetry and essays and sort of some memoir type of things. And yeah, I kind of read a few poems in it, but it was just kind of like, not right now. I'll keep it around on my shelf, you know, with probably all these books. None of these books, except maybe the South Sudan one for me, were like, I really would never go back to that sort of thing. But the rest, most of these books that I'm showing you today are ones that are going to stick around and that I might go back to. So, or at least had something very interesting in them that I would go back to. So. I can't really say much about indigenous literatures from Micronesia because I haven't read it yet. I just wanted to show it. I just don't anticipate I'm going to be reading this before I kind of get to my end of my 1001 Nights of Reading the World, and then sort of take a little hiatus from the book reviews. But this, instead of starting with the star of the show, as I called Tales from Croatia in the video about the folktale collections, I have saved the best for last today, which is Nocturnal Apparitions, Essential Stories by Bruno Schulz. I am technically counting him for Ukraine. He was born in what is now modern day Ukraine and lived most of his life there in a town called Drohobych. That sounds bad. It was actually part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time, and then Poland, and is now part of Ukraine. He was ethnically Polish, a Polish Jewish writer and artist. This is a pretty cool collection. I have mixed feelings about it, though. So I remember actually being introduced to this one, once again, through a video game. Pathologic 2. I played a little bit of that game, and as I do with a lot of video games I've liked, I go on the internet and search what books are like this game, and one of the things that came back was a short story by Bruno Schulz, The Street of Crocodiles. So that was the first one I read, and it was awesome. So I got this tiny book, and I have to say I do really like how little it is. However, the first few stories weren't really hitting it. The Street of Crocodiles is kind of in the middle of the book, and I have to say it wasn't until the story Cinnamon Shops that I really started getting it and understanding that in all these stories, like, it's technically a short story collection, but if you told me this was a novel, instead of calling it essential stories, these stories are so interconnected. The same symbols recur in all the stories. There is a narrative thread going through all the stories, symbolic threads. The narrator's father is mentioned in every single story, practically. There's actually a narrative progression to it. So I'm very confused as to kind of how this is a collection, if there are some things omitted as part of this narrative, or if it's been put together so that it actually makes a narrative. I guess somebody who's read the entirety of Bruno Schulz could tell me if which is the case. Is it edited to make it seem like it's more of a a continuous narrative, or is it actually omitting some things that would make it even more of a narrative? I don't know. That's what I want to know. So Nocturnal Apparitions, when I got to Cinnamon Shops, that was the story that really caught me. Then into Street of Crocodiles, then The Gale, then The Night of the Great Season, the book, and then it was like story after story was just like, wow, I don't really know what's going on, but the words, the way the words are put together, the constant combination of sort of melancholy imagery and sort of I used the word dark in the last video so many times I just can't I can't use it again, can I? It's just it's just all very shadowy. It's very claustrophobic. Even like this tiny compact book, right? I don't know if it's actually the physical book and reading it here that makes it feel claustrophobic. But I think even the writing, the paragraphs being kind of blocky, most of the stories taking place within small, what I imagine to be small spaces. Even Street of Crocodiles, which talks about the whole town, it begins looking at just a big map of the town on a wall, which just augments that feeling of claustrophobia, and this feeling carries throughout the whole book. And I do have a hard, like, it's not my favorite kind of thing to read, in the sense that, like, it's uncomfortable, right? And it's kind of like Auto da Fe by Elias Canetti, that kind of claustrophobia that's not only physical spaces that these things are taking place in, but the way that you are so encased in the narrator's psychology that you can't break out of it. Or like The Blind Owl, which I read many videos ago. That is another example. Hedayat, that was a great book too, but also just a very uncomfortable book to read, and like one that you want to reread it to understand it, but it's uncomfortable to do so. And I'm sure that there's people that really resonate with Bruno Schulz more so than I do, but I still really respect it and admire what's going on here, and definitely will reread and go back to these stories at some point. In fact, I even reread some of them now as I was before this video. So, yeah, fascinating collection. One thing I will say, though, the final two stories in here, The Sanatorium Under the Hourglass and Father's Last Escape, made me think and wonder if if every story in here isn't like making an overt reference to some other work of literature, because The Sanatorium Under the Hourglass, I just could not think of anything except Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain being condensed into a short story form. But it's funny, because when I told my wife about The Magic Mountain, she thought it sounded like Anton Chekhov's story, Ward Number 6, turned into a long novel. So I don't know who influenced who or who ripped off who, but they're all great works. but I just could, you know, reading the Sanatorium Under the Hourglass, that in fact would be, I don't know if that's the literal translation of the story, but that would be a great alternate title even for the Magic Mountain. The obsession with time, the way time gets distorted at the sanatorium. It's just all every symbol in it just seems to be pointing to Thomas Mann, and I believe it was written after the Magic Mountain. I'm almost certain of that. Well, maybe not. He said, it says he lived his creative life in the brief respite between the wars in newly independent Poland of the 1920s and 30s. So maybe not, but I think it's likely that it was after the Magic Mountain, although I don't know if he was influenced by that. And then Father's Last Escape, the final story in this novel is like okay, Kafka, yeah, but whatever. You'll see what I mean when you read it for yourself, if you do. But yeah, Bruno Schulz, Nocturnal Apparitions, a great choice for autumn, October, Halloween spirit too. So, I mean, obviously that's you know, it's good for any season. It's great literature. So, that's all I got today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time with whatever the book is. Take care.